Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Welcome. Ladies, you are part of week 2 of the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum podcast and YouTube channel. So this is wonderful to have all three of you. We're just really excited to be able to use this as a venue to bring more attention to Florida's women in energy leaders, I should say. You each are leaders in your company. So I understand that a couple of you don't know one another. So how about we dive right in to introductions and get you each introduced to one another and to our audience. Laquita, let's start with you.
Thanks, Lila, and welcome everyone. My name is Laquita Gent. I'm the Vice President of Region Support at Duke Energy. And you'll say, well, what is that, Laquita? It's 7 different departments that basically support our operations, everything from contract management, safety, development of our employees, and our major projects and assets. And we also help with process and productivity and our business integration for new projects. And so I have been with Duke Energy for 14 years. I am a graduate of Florida State University. Go Noles.
Go Noles.
And I absolutely love the energy sector. And it's been something that I never thought that I would venture into. But it's been something that has definitely helped to broaden my horizon and especially show the impacts that the energy has on our world today. So I'm very excited about today's conversation and to be on with all of you wonderful, powerful ladies. So thanks, Lila.
Thank you, Laquita. And thanks to Duke Energy for making this podcast happen. We really appreciate your sponsorship today and for future podcasts. So thank you. Rachel, how about you? 2 engineers. This is
from
rare,
Florida
right?
State. Yeah, the Noles are representing.
And Noles and engineers. That's right.
Anyhow, it is wonderful to be here. So thank you very much for having me join the 2 of you. I work for Geosyntec Consultants. We're an engineering firm. I'm in the Jacksonville, Florida office, and I run our groundwater group here. And so we work a lot with power clients and helping them solve challenging environmental issues that they face. So very happy to be here. Like Laquita, I got my undergrad at Florida State, got my master's from the University of Virginia, and then started my professional career here in Jacksonville.
That's great.
So thanks again for having me.
So Rachel and Laquita, if Geosyntec and Duke are not yet working together, by the end of this, you will be, right?
We've got a great reason.
That's what this is about. This is business to business, right? And networking.
Love
Danielle Mulligan. What do you do there at Chesapeake Utilities, Danielle?
So I'm actually in a new position. I am the AVP of Marketing and Corporate Communications. So I oversee corporate communications for Chesapeake Utilities Corporation and then all the affiliates. And that involves all internal and external communications to different types of stakeholders, you name it. We work very closely with all cross-functional departments throughout the company. And I'm the only Nole, I think, the non-Seminole on this call, but I am actually studying right now at George Washington University to finish up my master's in strategic public relations. So I'm kind of doing double duty on work and school, and I'm so happy to be here. This is a really neat thing to be a part of, Lila.
Thank you, Danielle, and congratulations. So let's start with you, Danielle. We waited until there was a global pandemic, and let me disclose, in full disclosure, I serve on the Chesapeake Utilities Board of Directors, and so we waited until there was a global pandemic and social justice issues that were triggered with the murder of George Floyd, and Then we said, Danielle, I think you need to be promoted to this high-powered parent company level communications position. And so congratulations to you, and you are the right person for this opportunity. But there were some challenges, right? There were some challenges associated with the timing of your promotion. Do you want to elaborate on how you were able to quickly come in and help the CEO with the communication efforts on both of those issues?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. It's a very interesting time to step into this role for sure. I came from Florida Public Utilities, so we are no stranger to crisis, right? We've had some pretty serious storms over the past few years, starting with some, Hermine, which was just basically a strong wind, and leading all the way up to total destruction of Michael. That affected our service territories in Northwest Florida. And that experience alone prepared me for crisis communications on a level that I never thought I would get that type of education. That's not the kind of thing you learn in school, that's for sure. That is the type of thing you learn in collaboration with a lot of different groups and people. And so it just so happened, stepping into this role, that figuring out how to talk to external audiences and our employees, and all of the components and the communication channels and the things that are required really to be able to be effective and clear and consistent with your communications, they just kind of all fell into place. But what was so exciting was that I had an opportunity to, can you still hear me? Because
we can.
Yeah. I had an opportunity to work outside of the Florida market and with all of the different affiliates and all those different teams, all the communications professionals, the operations folks, HR, all of those teams coming together to collaborate. And there was no lack of motivation to get up a program quickly. And we had the tools and skills to do it, and a lot of talented people. So it was extremely challenging. It's probably some of the best work that I've had the opportunity to be involved in. And just really grateful, because now we're working in this environment that not only did we have to organize all these communications, but we did it working remotely, moving all of our people, most of our people that aren't first responders in the field or had to be in the office from home. So how do you do that effectively? And I think that because of our leadership and clear and consistent communications from them, particularly what they wanted to do and how they wanted to roll things out, we were able to accomplish some pretty significant things during the process. Between all these things you just covered, the pandemic, the racial injustices that we've seen, and all the stressors that come with that, and how that affects people. So, yeah, it's been quite the opportunity.
So I will come back to the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation, because we ought not conclude our time without talking about that. But in staying with the communication theme for just a second, Laquita and Rachel, I'm coming to you next. Laquita, it's you have to have expertise in communication regardless of your professional title or your career with an industry like energy. Would you agree with me and really elaborate for the benefit of, I'm hoping that there are students as part of our attendees, just the way there are students as part of our forum each year. And we really want to send a message, I think, that communication skills are relevant regardless of the industry you choose, but in particular, why it's relevant to energy.
Absolutely. I would agree with the communication skills. And I think it's very important for everyone, but especially for women, for people to be able to, for you to have that voice and make sure that you have a confident voice. And sometimes it's hard for people to effectively communicate. It's not their comfort zone, especially in front of others. But with utility industry, the energy sector, there are forums that we're in front of regulatory bodies, we're in front of our communities, and we need to be able to effectively communicate, but also, and I know that others may agree with this, you have to make sure that it's not too technical. And so make sure that it's relevant, but it's easy for anyone to consume, because everyone is not an engineer, everyone's not in the energy industry, but these things are important to them as they live their lives. And so I think it's very important for us to make sure that we're able to turn off that switch where we can be technical, but then also make sure that we turn it off so that we can make sure we can be relatable to all of our customers and also our communities that we serve.
Thank you. Rachel, what's been your experience in that regard? I really appreciated Laquita also saying that as women, there's an added emphasis to, looking at how we communicate and the, degree in which we are cognizant of how we communicate.
Yeah, I really related to when Laquita said how to be relatable. Because especially in these times, they're challenging, there's uncertainty, people are anxious and nervous. And if you can't clearly communicate how you're going to get something done effectively, you've lost that respect or the sense of making people feel at ease and calm. And I think being able to do that, especially in these times, is extremely powerful. And I think being able to do that is a strength of women, because I feel like we can relate to others and we can sense when someone's feeling uneasy and how to put them at ease quickly. And so as women, I feel like that's one of our strengths, and communication is key to that.
And to being available for promotion. Don't you think that part of promotional advancement has to do with the hiring partners looking at the way you can translate a message and communicate it so that the team around you is buying into that message and implementing it at an enterprise level? And Rachel, in that regard, let's get even more personal and talk about, your individual career at Geosyntec and how you started there and your ability to move up the food chain.
Yeah, so I started with Geosyntec 11 years ago, and sometimes it feels like I started yesterday, and sometimes, and in a good way, right? That it hasn't been and felt like it's been 11 years. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, in just 11 years, it's really felt like a home. So it really, to me, feels like it's the best place for me. And it really allows people that growth. And that's evidence in really how my career has grown over the last 11 years. So I started as a senior staff engineer, and I was sent out in the field to help, be that boots on the ground person to figure out, where contamination was. And I was reporting back to the office and helping the, more senior engineers at that time solve problems and be their eyes. And then I think it was really just the engagement, right? And my passion for what we were doing and the ability to communicate to clients very clearly what I was seeing and doing and what the next steps were, that really allowed me to transition my career from the person in the field being very hands-on to the person leading another, and then, now a team, and really having a leadership role and a national group throughout the firm. So
one of your questions from the Power Profile, and all three of you were recognized in the Power Source, your May, June, and July, I think, right? And one of the questions that we asked you, Rachel, I think brought up the response that you started your career as an intern. And again, for those students in the room, and you also said that you think there's been a slight increase in women joining the engineering field again, which is great news, right? We need more of that. But I think that it's good to, especially in these economic times, really keep the door open for internships if you're a student, right? I mean, you're a perfect example of that, I think, with your company.
Yeah, we always have internships. We also go to students. There's lots of STEM programs available, even at, middle school and high school settings, college too. But, if you can really engage students at that young age, you can make a difference. And so we've done that a lot. And I think that's so important, that they hear from another female that it's possible. You can do it. They see us doing it. And, just being that role model and being open, right? And taking whatever opportunity you can to connect with, another individual is really important to ensuring that engineering and any science, technology, engineering, and math profession really gets that female voice behind it.
Right. A little bit related to that, Laquita, we have our first question, and it's to you. And the question is, do you have a mentor? And is there a difference between having a mentor and a champion? Are they both important?
So yes, I do have a mentor, and they are very important because there's times where you may just need a sounding board, but then you also need someone to help you along the way in making decisions, and also not just decisions in the role that you're currently in, but maybe what your next step is. And so for me, that's the difference between a mentor and then there's the champion, to your point. And there's, many different words that people use in that space. But I would call it someone that's in spaces that you're not in that can advocate for you. And they're at tables that you're not able to sit at the moment. And they're able to prop you up and position you in a place where you could be recognized. And so I feel that also going back to something that Rachel said, as female leaders, we may gravitate to other female leaders. But what I found is that having several different mentors that may not look like you and may not have the same approach as you is what you need, because as women, and most are, we're more empathetic, but sometimes I need a male counterpart to help me with some of those operational and more strong conversations. Everyone's not a mother, but I am. And so I tend to put on my mother hat. And then I'll need to have that mentor that says, Laquita, don't go there. Make sure that you're stern in your delivery, and there's time for empathy, but then there's time for you just to lay the cards on the table and be real. And so I appreciate having those different perspectives in a mentorship. And so I would definitely encourage at all levels, leadership, or just as Rachel said earlier, I started as well as an individual contributor at the entry level, having a mentor there. And I think that helps to have that sounding board and prop you up for success.
Laquita, I always say that the mentor is the person, and man or woman, you all have heard me say that I've had male mentors. It's men that have been my mentors and champions. And, I believe I owe it to them to take this forward and really do a better job in making sure everyone has an opportunity to succeed. But so the mentor is, has your best interests in mind when they are telling you sometimes what you don't want to hear.
Absolutely.
But the champion, until we get to the table, the champion is the one that has your back and sponsors your efforts because he or she is at the table. And in that regard, Danielle, the next question we've gotten here from the chat room is, what's the best advice you've ever received from a mentor or a champion?
That's a really great question. I recall a time where I was promoted. I thought I was moving into a marketing manager position, which I interviewed for that position and I got that position. But then it came with the sales management as well. So all of a sudden, I wasn't just stepping into marketing, but I was stepping into managing all of the sales, inside, outside. It was just a whole nother realm of the business that I wasn't, I didn't have the skill set yet for, right? So I was stepping into that. And I remember being extremely just overwhelmed in that there was so many reports and spreadsheets and rates and different things that I needed to get up to speed on really quickly. And I didn't feel like there was enough time in the day to do all that and lead at the same time. And so I approached my mentor and my boss at the time, Aleda Sakaris, and one of my favorite people on the planet. And she said to me, I explained to her what my concerns were. And, I was really putting myself out there to be vulnerable to saying, I just don't know how I'm going to manage all of this and be good at this. And she said, it's not about the spreadsheets. It's about the people. And it really affected me and reframed my entire view of what I needed to be as a leader, that I needed to trust my SMEs, my subject matter experts, to bring to me their ideas and the information that I needed to make the right decisions. But I also had to create that space, that safe space for them to be able to do that. So my job was to be a respected leader, that they knew I supported them, and let them worry about the spreadsheets and those things, right? And let them come to me, and let's all sit at the table and make decisions together based on their expertise. And that just opened a whole new realm of just reality for me, and sent me down my path another few years to grow and learn and grow into an even expanded position from there.
She nailed it, didn't she? It's about
She
sure did.
You can respond to any question, right? It's about the people.
The people, yeah, you had me right there.
Yeah. And Aleda, if you've never met Aleda Sakaris, she recently retired from the industry, and a woman who positively impacted everyone she met, and just one of my favorite people in the whole world. And after the first Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum, Aleda and Cheryl Martin, also with Florida Public Utilities at the time, went back. Because one of the things I said when I closed the forum is, please don't let this be the book that you put on the shelf and never do anything with. And it's more important what you do after the forum than it is what you've done here in the last couple of days. And I always appreciated that Aleda and Cheryl went back to their company and created a internal FPU Women in Energy that now has grown into a parent level Women in Energy initiative. And it matters, right, Danielle? It matters. I'm going to pose the question in a minute to Laquita and Rachel, but while we're talking about Aleda and that effort related to women in energy, why are those kinds of initiatives important in-house?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, the mentor and the champion, right? Because it aligns you with leaders that you wouldn't normally have day-to-day interaction with. And to be able to sit with them and ask them questions, just to be seen, right? And learn from them and hear these, it's about the people, not the spreadsheet type of tidbits of information that are going to take you through your entire career. We wouldn't have those opportunities if we didn't have these gatherings, and we have them frequently. We have them weekly now. And so they're really, really important. And again, I think, when we talk about the mentor and the champion, for me, Aleda was sort of the mentor and the champion, and I've had a lot of combined mentors and champions, but I think their roles are different in that the mentor really calls you out, right, on your blind spots, and they don't hold back. They tell you where you're at. And the champion sees something in you like a second before you do, or an hour or a year, but they see that thing in you, and their job is to help you see it too. And so I've been really blessed to have that experience. And I think that's what Women in Energy does. And it doesn't just bring the women together, it brings us all together so we can understand each other. So I just think it's such an important initiative for us, and we've been really proactive since that first Women in Energy, to expand and do more under the guidance of Cheryl Martin now and others that have really helped us move forward in that initiative.
And Rachel, I don't know if you have a formal program. We're about to hear about that, but I'll tell you, you may may or may not know, you have a champion in Nandra Weeks. I mean,
I
I have been introduced to you because of the champions you have within Geocentric. So if that's the culture of your organization, you are in a great organization.
We have so many different champions. And actually, before this call, I was reminded that I have to call on my tribe to help support me. So for all of my tribe out there, thank you.
Like
But it was really important, right? And it was just that one little reminder that really drives the point home, because, women in power and women in my firm and meeting, women at the grocery store, wherever. It's just so important to help back them and be supportive, because we all carry the weight of the world, it seems like at times. And you just never know when that one little, hey, what are you doing? Keep going. Let's go. Let's do this. You're strong, go out there and conquer it. Really get you through some tough times. So the culture within the company is very supportive of mentor opportunities. It was actually a grassroots effort decades ago that some other strong women within the firm started, and it's held true since, the 90s. And now it's developed into more of a formal mentorship that encompasses, all aspects, men, women, and how to combine them together for a mentoring opportunity.
Absolutely. And Laquita, I think we all should be jealous of you, because your greatest champion is your president of Duke, Florida, Catherine Stempian. So, talk about your employee resource groups. I know you have them because Duke has been, just like FPU and Chesapeake, Duke has been one of the inaugural sponsors of this initiative. And as evidence today, has taken it even further to put their support behind this educational venue. So you got it, girl. You're surrounded by it.
Catherine is awesome, and she makes sure that she shatters that glass ceiling everywhere she goes. And she is the example of not having that crab mentality. And so that's one of the things that I've learned from her, is that we must reach back. And so early on in my career, there weren't many Catherines. There were, it's a male-dominated industry. So my champions and mentors were males. And one of my male champions told me, as I sat down and frustrated, and is you need to, and when he said this, I said, is this really the advice that you're giving me? It's show vulnerability. And I was like, not doing that. But, as sometimes as women, we want to come prepared at all lengths. And we then look like robots. We don't show that side, that vulnerability, and that side of, we don't know everything. And we need to, as Danielle said, reach out to our subject matter experts for help. And so the advice that he gave me back then was, don't try to, have the weight of the world on your shoulders. Detach sometimes and be vulnerable. And so that has helped me to navigate. And then Catherine coming along and just sealing that, that same mentality, but also, as I said earlier, is reaching back to others and being what Laquita needed when I was an individual contributor and didn't see that. So now that there are women at the table, go back and reach to other individual contributor ladies that are out there that may say, I don't know if I have a seat at the table, or if I will ever have a seat at the table. Prop them up and encourage. And I think that stands true just in our industry, but just as in our world today. We need to prop each other up in all that we do. And so Catherine has definitely done that. She's been a great advocate for our employee network groups that we have at Duke Energy. We have so many different, but she's also here recently helped to push our diversity and inclusion initiatives and be that voice, especially with what's gone on with unfortunate events with George Floyd. She's been able to say, have that voice, and also say that we need to stand, and we need to stand as a bold front around injustices. And so I'm very happy, very fortunate, as you said, Lila, to be able to work with Catherine and many others at Duke Energy as we try to ensure that we are being equitable for everyone.
Let's go right there, Laquita. Let's start with Danielle. I promised we would get back to the very, very important conversations related to diversity, equity, inclusion. I've been known to say that we no longer have a diversity issue, we have an inclusion issue. I don't know if I'm right. I'm sure it depends on the company and the circumstances, but it seems to me that with the tragic uh, deaths of a number of individuals now, sadly, very many after what I consider the murder of George Floyd, it's brought to the conversation what's corporate America doing to raise awareness with regard to opportunity for Black professionals. And so if each of you would kind of describe what actions your companies have taken, and the messaging. Danielle, the reason I want to start with you is Jeff was rather swift, he and Catherine rather swift in messaging their emotional and professional reactions to what was happening.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we're all working apart, right? So we're all working from home. We're not even together. We can't even come into the office and join us in our family like environments to talk about these things. So again, it's part of the overall clear and consistent messaging to our employees about where we stand as a corporation, where we stand for our employees, what we want to do in terms of improving our communities and helping our communities thrive. If our communities aren't thriving, we're not thriving, right? And so for Jeff to come out the way he did right away, on that next, we were having employee calls on a weekly basis at that time, which I don't even know how many there were. There was weeks and weeks and weeks, 15 of them, I think, in a row. And then we had a couple weeks in between where we're kind of spreading them out. But he came out in that next employee meeting and sent messaging out and just let everyone know exactly who we are and where we stand as far as, EDI. What are we going to do as a corporation in order to step into that space and make sure that everyone that works here and everyone that's going to come here has an opportunity to not only have a seat at the table, but design the table, solve problems together. And I think that we understand that our differences are precious. They make us stronger. And it's our leadership that's really kind of guiding us down that path to understand that as an organization, this is where we're going and we're never going back. We've got a long way to go, and we're going to go forward for a long time. So yes, I think that with the EDI Council that we have that is doing a lot of work in these past couple of months to start programs similar to the Women in Energy, where they're meeting regularly, they're designing programs, they're designing collateral and messages. We're sending frequent messages out to all employees about current events and where we stand on certain things. And anytime there's an important event, an EDI important event, a calendar event, or a history event that we need to be aware of, that we're putting information out there. So it's been an incredible few months in this area, and as tragic as it is, and how we never want to see these things happen again. There has been a lot of good, and there will be a lot more good that comes out of it as we see corporations like mine and yours and all of us on this call, and all of us that are probably listening and tuning in right now. It's up to us, corporate America, to help push us forward as a country, because I think that people trust us probably before some other agencies and other other groups out there. It's really up to us. It's our responsibility, and again, it's to help our employees and our communities thrive for the betterment of all of us.
So Danielle, we're getting great reactions about the notion, which I wholeheartedly agree with it. It's not enough to have a seat at the table, but to be in a place where you can design the table and influence the discussion. And that is what we mean by inclusion and equity, right? At least partially equity. That's not the only way we get equity, obviously. But one of the things I saw Jeff do that I hadn't seen in many other places, it wasn't just an employee call, it was also asking for feedback and the surveys that were going out on, and it was again not just taking the step of asking. It's also, you've got to show your employees and your team members that you accept their ideas and you're implementing them.
Right.
And as I recall, the Diversity Council and the initiatives that are kicked up a notch, if you will, now came from internal ideas, right? And
Right.
and Laquita, turning to Duke, we know that that matters, right? Especially if the president is looks like you, right? So if it's Catherine Stempian, and I would note that's, we still have more work to do, right, Laquita? And we still have more work to do, but it does help when it's someone like that can say, we have more work to do, we're going to do it, and I'm going to lead by example.
Absolutely. And even, even the state president for Florida, but then our CEO for Duke Energy, Lynn Good, she also quickly responded and quickly proclaimed that just non-tolerance of not providing diversity and inclusion, and challenged all of us as leaders to look at not just the diversity and inclusion part, as you talked about, Lila, and we look at recruiting and putting in a plan for recruitment to have diversity. But then to your point, Lila, it talks about inclusion. So once you bring people in that look like me and my other minorities, what are we doing to make sure that they stay? What are we doing to make sure that the work environment there is inclusive and that they are able to thrive in that manner? And so we took a hard look at Duke Energy at our numbers of minorities and leadership roles, minorities in succession planning. And so we have to go back and look at all of that and to make sure that we are reflecting the communities that we serve. And that's the bottom line. And so Catherine's engagement with that. And then also, as we look internally, we're also looking externally, having, to your point, those conversations with our external community leaders on things that are, when you think about Duke Energy or you think about any of our companies from a diversity and inclusion perspective, what do you see? And so we have to be ready for the feedback that we get. It may not be nice, but then what are we going to do with that feedback to change? And so reaching out to our community partners is our next step at Duke Energy in Florida for us to be able to grow. And some would say, well, why now? Well, why not now?
Why not?
And so, there's a lot of things that everyone is doing in diversity and inclusion space because of the death of George Floyd. But I think, to your point, like, there's been so many before George Floyd, and that we should have picked up this torch a long time ago. But I'm very happy that we're here now. Just sad about the circumstances that led us here.
Yeah. And so Rachel is nodding her head because she's like, and that's why you need to work with Geocentric, right, Rachel?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we value diversity in all aspects, but I will say that the recent events have promoted more of a focused interest on how can we be better, because we all understand that diversity in race, sex, religion, geography, whatever, right? Your education, your level of experience, you end up with a better work product. And I think, like others were considering, if you want to change, you really need people to give you honest input on what's going wrong, what their experiences have been, for better or for worse. You need to know them. And so it takes real strong people to talk about it. But then you need to listen and show people that you've heard them and show them what you're doing about it. And picking up that torch, totally agree. We should have done it a really long time ago, but we just need to make sure that torch keeps going and doesn't get put out again, right? And that's really where the momentum is going to happen and where that change is going to come from. So.
Yeah, and I agree with Rachel that it's interesting. I think corporate America is in a place where they can actually make more of a difference than government. First, as bureaucratic as we may think our organizations are, they're still not as bureaucratic as government, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way. Obviously, I'm a product of state government, having served on the Florida PSC, but it's just that the processes in that procurement, government setting, political environment, whatever, doesn't allow movement in the same pace that corporations can respond. And I think the other thing, Danielle, you said was because energy companies are used to dealing with crises, unfortunately, because of storms or weather related events, your processes did enable you to quickly gather employees, to quickly respond related to COVID and Black Lives Matter. And so I agree with your point that there's a leadership opportunity for corporations, I hope, and that we don't lose the momentum. The silence does get scary sometimes. So Laquita, you talked about your children, and the question I have next from the chat room is, do you think that there's a work-life balance? And if so, what's your advice on ensuring a healthy private life?
So for me, I think work-life balance is different for everyone. You have to create what that means for you. And so I will say I have a great support system. My parents, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law, they help me and my husband tremendously with our hectic schedules. But there are things that, may not work for Danielle and Rachel that will work for me. So it's not a one size fits all approach with work-life balance. And that's something that I had to learn. It's early on in my career. And some of the things that I do, I may start early when my kids are sleeping and start and finish later, especially now that we're working remotely and they're home with me most of the days. But I also say this is that make sure that things that are non-negotiable, people know. And so I never get some of those opportunities back to see my children grow and flourish. And so there are things that are non-negotiable, and I just make it known. And I would hope that my transparency and my willingness to make sure that my family is my priority is something that the company can respect. And Duke Energy has definitely done that. And so I'm very grateful. But then my children and my family also know that there are times when we are impacted by weather events or we're impacted by a pandemic that I may be out of pocket. And so, just as I am, they look at the tropics and they bite their fingernails like, oh no, mommy's going to be they kind of know. And so, like I said, I've built that work-life balance for my family. But
you still have kids at the age where they still like you.
Right. So you're saying that will change then, right?
No, don't.
Well, I mean, I don't want to scare you, but yeah, yes.
We'll savor and they still like me for a little bit longer.
They come back.
I have a preteen, so I'm sure that it's coming. But, and one of the things too is that with a work-life balance, don't let what people may think is your work-life balance become their perception. And so one of the things that I had to clearly let leadership know when I was trying and I was an individual contributor trying to get into a leadership position is, don't think that because I have children and I have a family that you know what I can and cannot do. Let me tell you what I can and cannot do. And that I think having that conversation early maybe surprised people, but that didn't hinder me because early on in my career, I had the opportunity. I live in Polk County and I've always worked an hour from my home. And so I was working in Orlando and I had just had my daughter. And the opportunity came up to work in St. Pete. And so I 4 275 every day, but I didn't let someone say, well, she just had a baby, I don't think she'll want to drive and make that commute. I said, no, let me and my support system work on my children. And if I'm the right person for the job because of what's on paper and my credentials and what I've done, let that speak for me and let me tell you what I can and cannot do. And so that's what I would offer, is that whatever your work-life balance is, you talk to your support system and then you make the decision on how you navigate through that.
Absolutely. Rachel, do you want to comment, weigh in on this?
Honestly, I'm just like, you guys are motivating me. Like, I'm learning so much, and I'm one of the panelists. So I'm just going to throw that out there. That
Good.
Really amazing. But I guess I'll add, to making sure that you have your space. For me, it's always, for me to have that balance, I need to make sure that I'm carving out time for myself.
Right.
And maybe that's, spending an hour and getting a facial or a massage, or just going to the beach and having that quiet time. But it really allows me to mentally get into a spot where then I'm ready and I'm free to tackle the next thing, the next challenge at work, or maybe even on my personal life. But without that, if I'm constantly grinding and not giving myself a chance to take it easy and relax, I'm not effective. And I think, like LaQuinta said, it's very unique to everybody, but listening to yourself and understanding where your boundaries are is super important to finding the balance that works well for you.
Right. So my friend Anna just commented that working at home, working remotely, has allowed her to bring her daughter into a view of what she's doing. And I think that's absolutely right. I teased before we started rolling here that my technical assistant is my 16-year-old daughter. And I think the giving, and we all have that 16-year-old technical assistant, right? I think that working remotely has had the value add of exposing our children to what we really do. Because for years and years, I used to explain what exactly I did at the law firm or what exactly I did at the PSC, but bringing it home to let them visualize it is a whole different level of education, I think. So thank you, Anne. I agree with you. Danielle, we have just a few minutes, and I want to talk about the substance behind your work, all three of you. And it's I'm determined to get Geosyntic, and I don't represent them, y'all. So this is me just doing my thing about women empowerment, but it's before we close, we got to get Geosyntic hired by your companies. Danielle, talk about Chesapeake Utilities' recent announcement in the RNG space and what we're doing with BioDev.
Sure. And also I would recommend everybody go to chpk.com, because all of our press releases are posted in our newsroom, and gives a really nice overview of the different things that we have going on in terms of RNG and some other projects that may be coming down the pike and will be posted soon. But we're progressing on multiple opportunities in the RNG space, and with Bioenergy DevCo, who's a global leader in turning ag waste into biofuel. And they do that with ag waste. So that in this case, it's poultry, from the poultry industry. So this particular project would involve us partnering with BioDevCo to convert that biogas from the farm waste into RNG at a processing plant that is Chesapeake Utilities processing plant, and convert that into RNG. And from there, we would take that RNG and transport that into our own system and inject that right back into our system and serve our customers. And so it's a really important project for a lot of different reasons. For environmental reasons, it solves a huge major waste management problem, or it has the potential to, and Rachel, you could probably speak to this, on this for days, but as far as what it does for water quality or protecting the watershed. And so there's a lot of interest there, and that interest is growing because my team and RNG Coalition and others are really trying to be the storytellers and take this really technical information and break it down into something that consumers, public officials, environmental activists, everyone kind of understands what is RNG and what are the benefits, you know, from the environmental standpoint, economic development, creating jobs, and, you know, using clean fuels to power businesses and homes. And so much potential. So our team's job was really working on a communication strategy around RNG, and then, you know, through social media and different collaterals, earned media, setting up interviews for our CEO to get out there and talk about these projects in his own words, and which are great words. And so, yeah, it's really an exciting time for us.
I think he would say, knowing Jeff would say it's because you wrote them.
You know, I'll backpedal on that.
Just say thank you.
Thank you.
As women, we have to learn how to just say thank you.
Well, let's put it this way. Thank you. And it was an extreme team effort of a lot of communications, our you know, communications people sitting down with highly technical teams.
Yes.
Saying, okay, now wait, how does this work? It goes from in the anaerobic digester does, and what does that look like? And I can picture a chicken, you know. So, you know,
I'm gonna wind one level of the extreme is going to be the chicken. So what I say about all of that, Danielle, when people start speaking in a technical language way over my head, I just say, please remember that English is my second language.
I don't know where to go with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Laquita, you are pursuing renewable energy as well at Duke.
We are, you know, our goal, you know, with the pandemic, so we've had to adjust in so many different ways. We all had, right? And so this is just another iron in the fire for us. But, you know, by 2030, we want to reduce our carbon footprint by 50%. And so to do that, we've got to think outside of the box. So distributed energy generation, our solar, there's just so many different avenues at Duke Energy that we are looking into and thrusting ourselves to just do it so that we can meet that mark by 2030. As Danielle said, we've got to decrease our carbon footprint. And so we've been greatly working with our sustainability team to ensure that we can meet this goal, and it will be met, and it's going to be something that's attainable. And so not just here in Florida, but across the Duke Energy footprint.
Great. So Rachel, I'm going to give you the last word. You think you found an economic opportunity here for yourself?
You know, absolutely. We've been, you know, I guess as consulting engineers and people that are real passionate for the environment and making sure that we leave something for these future generations, it's really important to move away from less clean fuel sources and we move to something renewable. So we're constantly trying to figure out how best to help our clients and position them so that when they transfer, and I'll just use solar as an example because of the, land capacity, that we're helping them site those places and finding properties that don't have liabilities and doing that due diligence to support them, but also finding out ways to help them decommission some of their former operations in a really cost-effective manner so that they're saving that capital and that budget to help implement some of the cleaner things. So if there's anything that I can leave you with about Geosyntec is that we are just absolutely passionate about solving some really complex problems. And we have very diverse teams to help do that.
Wow, what a great place to end, because isn't that true about each of you? We are about solving complex problems, aren't we? Great leaders. Didn't I tell you the 45 minutes? I think we went over just a bit. Didn't I tell you it would fly by? Thank you for your availability. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being part of this dialogue at Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum. I would encourage attendees to please subscribe to the channel, because that is how we're getting the word out about future interviews. We have them every week. We promise great content because with these great women, how can you not have great content? Thank you, Duke, for making this happen, Duke Energy. Thank you for making the interview and the podcast happen. You all have a great afternoon. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.